Through the Night. That was one of the hymns that I learned for 11 a.m. Mass. I used to play in church every single Sunday, and I would only have about 30 to 20 minutes to learn everything. So I'd show up a little bit early, go through the hymnals, pick out the pieces, put them in front of me, and I only had time to play each hymn 2 or 3 times before it was time to play in front of everybody. Everybody was singing to these hymns. How did I get to the point where I could do this, to go from those method books and those easy classical songs to learning pretty quickly? Long story short, it took me years and years and years of study, doing things like scales, chords, and inversions, and functional harmony, and trying to learn how everything worked together, so that instead of reading each individual note and trying to figure out what each one was, learning a cohesive and encompassing system so that I could look at these notes through a lens and know what they're a part of, know certain structures that were going to precede what I was playing. Music became much more broad and became much more predictable, and that's what allowed me to really take off with sight reading. In this video, I want to explain exactly that. I want to explain scales and chords and inversions and functional harmony, and I want to do it through analogy. So learning music, digesting music, and sight reading music is just like building a house. First, we have to know the foundation of the house. We have to build the foundation of the house. Then we build up the frame of the house and the rooms, and then we can put furniture in those rooms in order to make it a living space. But now we have our house. We're living in that house. We are having a nice, cozy day. It's 72 degrees outside. It's sunny. It's perfect. It's resolute. It is fully consonant. There's nothing going on. And so now that we're in this house, we decide to take a walk. We go to the park and go for a stroll, get some fresh air. It's not unfamiliar territory, but it's something a little bit fresh, and we can still get back home pretty easily. Now, let's say you wander into a part of town that you're not very familiar with. Then something dangerous happens, something sketchy happens. You want to run straight back home. You can either go through the park, or you can run all the way straight back home, and you're safe again. This is the story that I like to use to explain how all these concepts build off of each other. So first, let's start with the scale. The scale is the foundation of the house. We're going to use big concrete blocks. We're going to need big blocks and small blocks. So what are the big blocks and what are the small blocks? Those are whole steps and half steps. So whole steps, actually we'll start with half steps. Half steps are two notes that are directly next to each other. So if I chose the note G and I went up a half step, I'd move to G sharp or A flat. If I chose the note G and I wanted to go down a half step, I'd move to G flat or F sharp. So any note at all, even including B, a half step up from B is going to be C. Any note. Doesn't matter if it's black or white, going from black to white, white to black. It is a half step if they are directly next to each other. Two halves make a whole. These are the big blocks. If I want to go up a whole step from G, I move to A. If I want to go up a whole step from A, I move to B. What about a half step from B? That's C. All right, so if we arrange these blocks in a way that makes the foundation level, it's going to end up looking like this. It'll be a very specific formula. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. That's how you form any major scale. So a major scale is a 7-note scale. There's a ton of different types. There's harmonic minor. There is major pentatonic, which is 5 notes. There's the chromatic scale, which is 12 notes. We're going to need 7, and we use these blocks in this order. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. You can take any note on the keyboard. We can do, let's do B flat. If we take that same formula, we can form the major scale of B flat. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. One quick note before we move on. Whenever we're measuring distances or intervals, whatever note you start on, you don't count, because that's technically 0. You haven't gone anywhere. So now it is time to form some chords. Chords are the rooms of that house. All right, so we've got the foundation. We're going to build the frame, and then we're going to make the rooms. This is kind of all This is all a way of saying we're going to make some chords. Okay, so we're going to need a kitchen. We're going to need a living room. We're going to need a bedroom, bathroom, mudroom, dining room, whatever you want in this house, although we can only have 7 rooms. And that's based off of each of those 7 notes in the scale. So first we're going to start with G major. G major is based off of that G major scale. It's the 1st, 3rd, and 5th scale degrees. So the 1st, 3rd, and 5th scale degrees they apply for any major scale. If I wanted to take the C major scale and pick out the 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes of that scale, I end up with the major chord. That is how to make any major triad. But let's actually approach this from a different perspective. Let's talk about the intervals as well. Again, intervals are distances between notes, and a major triad has 2 specific intervals: a major third and a perfect fifth. Okay, let's break that down a little bit. The interval between G and B is a major third, and the interval between G and D is a perfect fifth. A major third is 4 half steps from the root, or the bottom note. 1, 2, 3, 4. The perfect fifth is 7 half steps from the root. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you take the root, form a major third and a perfect fifth, you will end up with a major triad, which is also the 1st, 3rd, and 5th scale degrees of that G major scale. Here's our house in G major, and using all of these notes, we can then form a bunch of different rooms. But another really good way to actually understand each one of those rooms, for example C major, is to also know the scale that's associated with that root. If you've found this video helpful, I strongly encourage you to check out pianowithpacha.com. Here I have a resource called Fundamentals that has every scale, every chord, and every inversion all in one place. Check it out. All right, we are also going to form some 7 chords. 7 chords are extensions of triads. Triads have 3 notes. The root of the word triad is 3. 7 chords have 4 notes. And why are they called 7 chords if there's 4 notes? It's because they add an additional interval to the triad called a 7. Okay, let's talk about D dominant 7. A dominant 7 chord is a tense sound, and it has a certain function within music. And that function is to set up a resolution. It wants to go somewhere. It wants to go back to what we call tonic or home base. But let's actually form the chord first. D, F sharp, A, and C. All right, so why do we learn all those scales when we were forming the chords? Here's why. We're going to add an interval. What is the 7th scale degree of the D major scale? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's C sharp. So here is the 7th scale degree. It's a major 7. We want a minor 7 though, because a D dominant 7 has a minor 7. How do we make a major interval minor? We lower it by a half step. The interval between D and C is a minor 7. Okay, so if we take the D major triad, and from the root we go up, I believe 10 half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yep. This forms the minor 7, and if we add it, it is now a dominant 7 chord. The quality of the chord changes. The sound changes a little bit. It sounds a bit more tense. It wants to go somewhere. The major triad is a bit more stable. We also need to form a dominant 7. All right, so we learned that A major scale. So now we can take the 7th scale degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's lower it. It's a major interval, so let's lower it to make it minor. Let's add that to the A major triad. A, C sharp, E, and G. And just like that, we have a dominant 7. All right, so these are all of the chords that we need to play the hymn, or at least play the first system of the hymn. Okay, before we actually play it though, we do need to learn a huge concept: inversions. Inversions are rearranging the furniture of that house. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Take a look. This is G major inverted. So I'm just changing the position of G major. But the thing about inversions is that it doesn't change the function of the chord. When I take the living room couch and I move it to a different wall, it's still the living room couch. It's still the living room, but I've just moved it. All right, let's move to another chord like C major. All right, so here is C major. If I want to, let's say this is the dining room. I want to put the dining room table up against the wall, so there's like a little bit more space in the room. So the dining room, the table is still there. I might have to move the chairs around a little bit, but it's still C major. Everything about it is the same. Everything about the quality of the chord is the same. So what inversions allow us to do is play in a different position, but it doesn't change the harmony. All right, so we're going to need to learn how to do that. So what do? We take any chord. We'll start with G major, and we're going to take the bottom note, G, drop it, and then bring it up an octave. So we still have G, B, and D. It's just rearranged now. So it's B, D, G. If I play every single one of these notes at the same time, I am playing in first inversion. This is when the third is the lowest note. Okay, if I do this process again, I take the bottom note, the third, B, and then bring it up an octave, and then play everything at the same time with one hand. Take a look. The fifth is the bottom note. This is second inversion. D, G, and B. Okay, if I take that bottom note, the fifth, and I bring it D, and I bring it up an octave, I've now returned to root position, where the root is the bottom note. Root position is how we learn to form chords generally. How then do we actually recognize, let's say you're playing a really complicated piece, how do you recognize a certain chord like G major in a different position? That has to do with the distances or the intervals between each of the notes. So whenever we're in root position, each note of this chord is positioned a major third or minor third from each other. So in other words, each note is either 4 half steps or 3 half steps from each other. If it's more than 3 half steps, if it's less than 3 half steps, it's a different interval. If it's more than 4 half steps, it's a different interval. So we avoid those. If a chord has all of the same notes as the G major chord, but look at the intervals. It exceeds a major third, or it's lower than a minor third, has less half steps than a minor third, then something's off. Then it's not a root position triad. It is an inversion of something else. It's not a B. It's not some sort of B chord. Because look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This right here, the interval between D and G is a perfect fourth. That means it is not in root position. It is a rearrangement of something different. And it takes going through each of these inversions to be able to recognize them a bit quicker. We're going to do the same thing for C major. We're going to learn how to invert it. So let's take C and bring it up an octave. So the third is the bottom note. And I'm just going to bring it down for the sake of the camera angle. So here's E, G, and C. I'm going to take E, bring it up an octave. So it's the fifth is the bottom note, G, C, and E. If I do it one more time, I have returned to root position. Here's root position. Here's first inversion. Here's second inversion. Here's root. Let's do the same thing now for D dominant 7. There are 4 notes in this chord, and that means there's going to be an additional inversion. Take a look. So let's take the root, bring it up an octave. So the third is the bottom note. This is first inversion. take the third, bring it up. So the fifth is the bottom note. This is second inversion. Take the fifth, bring it up an octave. This is third inversion, where the 7 is the bottom note. Do it one more time. Take that 7, bring it up an octave. We've returned to root position. So yes, keeping track of every single one of these notes is a hefty task, especially when you're first learning inversions, and we have to do it. Because when you're playing I guarantee it, I promise you, any piece of music that you may be reading or listening to, it has an inversion of whatever chords are at play. Okay, so now that we know the inversions, there's one more thing that I want to talk about before actually analyzing the piece and getting into all the chords and how they work together. Let's talk about how they work together. Functional harmony. So this is that analogy of leaving the house, going out to the park, wandering into some unfamiliar part of town, something dangerous happens, and then you run straight back home to what's familiar. What does that have to do with music? So let's talk about home base. In the key of G major, so we're not going to build any other houses right now. We're not going to be working with any other scales. We're going to talk about G major and the chords inside of G major. So every single one of those chords that we've formed apart from A, so G, C, and D, along with D major 7, every single one of these chords has component notes in the key of G major. We don't use any note that isn't G, A, B, C, D, E, or F sharp. Okay, that being said, we can give all of these chords a job. What I'm about to explain is functional harmony. Functional harmony is the job of each chord. We start with the home base, like the home chord. This is where the song ends, it's where the song starts, and this is our sense of like home, comfort, consonance, rest, resolution. We're hanging out at home. Then we decide to, just get some fresh air, take a step outside, go and we want some movement. We want to do something today. Let's go to the park. You can still see your house. It's across the street. You know how to get back home. Well, let's go for a little walk here. Go wander, check out new parts of town, but then you run into, maybe somewhere you don't want to be. We run into some sort of tense place, dissonant, unfamiliar. And we want to get back home, right? We want to go back to safety. So we can either walk back through the park, then return back home, or we can just go, just like run around and go straight back, take a shortcut. All right, so let's now apply some music theory to this. So the home base is known as the tonic. The tonic chord then often moves to the subdominant. The subdominant is a way to create movement. That subdominant then often leads to the dominant chord. And the dominant chord is the sense of tension or dissonance or unfamiliarity. And I think most people would agree that this dominant chord wants to resolve, and here I'm going to resolve it. It wants to go back to home base. We have home base, we have a bridge known as subdominant, we have a bridge to the dominant, which then wants to resolve back to the tonic. And sometimes we can take other paths to get back home. We can go to the subdominant and then go back to tonic. The order of the functions of each chords can change, and it will change in this hymn, and I'll explain that in a second. But before we do that, I also want to explain secondary dominants. I don't exactly have an analogy for this because it is pretty technical. So a secondary dominant is a dominant chord. It's a chord that has a dominant function, but it's not in the key of G major, and that is a dominant 7. As you can tell, a dominant 7 has a C sharp in it, and there is no C sharp in G major. There's only an F sharp. That means we're stepping outside of the key, and we are going to resolve this dominant chord because it needs a resolution, a fifth down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So when it comes to secondary dominants, there's a lot of layers here. We're in the key of G major, and within the key of G major, there is a dominant function. That dominant function wants to resolve a fifth down to G. A secondary dominant is a dominant chord that's outside the key of G major. It wants to resolve a fifth down, but that chord is going to be temporarily treated as a tonic chord, because otherwise this C sharp wouldn't have any, there wouldn't be any structure behind it. It's not a random note. It is a dominant chord in the key of D major, but that D major chord is a dominant function in the key of G major. Okay, so let's actually apply all of this to this hymn. Let's start with G major. Let's move to the second inversion, where the third is the bottom note. Look at my left hand. Moving to C major in root position. Then I move up to second inversion, A dominant 7 already. Here's A major, but you'll see the 7 come up. So we're stepping outside of the key of G major. We have a dominant chord that needs to resolve to its tonic. That tonic is temporarily, this chord is temporarily stepping outside of the key. That tonic, though, will be D major, which is a dominant function. Guess where that dominant chord goes? It goes to G. First inversion. All right, we're going to step to C major. Go to D dominant 7. To G major in root position. Okay, one more time. Here is G major. First inversion. C major first inversion, second inversion C major, secondary dominant A dominant 7, resolving to its tonic temporarily, which is actually the dominant function in the key of G major. Where does that dominant resolve? To the tonic, G major, first inversion. Here's C, root position. Here's an A, which will lead to, this is essentially D major or D dominant 7 in second inversion. Here's the rest of the chord, D dominant 7 in root position. That resolves to G major in root position. Alright, so the next part of this video isn't totally necessary, but something that's super duper helpful to know and to help make sense of chords across different pieces is the Roman numeral system. So we talked about the G major scale. I kept referring to each of those notes of the scale as scale degrees. The first scale degree, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. We can also turn these chords into, we can turn these roots, these scale degrees, into chords, and these are the rooms of the house. Okay, so in every single major scale, the first scale degree will have a major triad. Look, any other type of triad, like the minor, the diminished, augmented, wouldn't work because there's no, those flats and sharps aren't in the scale, so these don't work. The only chord we can form using the 1 is the major chord. All right, let's move on to 2. The only chord quality that we can form with 2 as the second scale degree as the root is minor. Any other chord quality based off of this note doesn't work. It doesn't fit in the scale. All right, let's move to the third. It's always minor. The fourth is always major. The fifth is always major. The sixth is always minor. The 7 is always diminished. This is consistent across all major scales, across all houses. Every house in this neighborhood has the same number of rooms and the same order of rooms. Let's say this is like the mud room. then you go to the entrance room, then the living room, then the kitchen, then the bathroom, then you go upstairs. Okay, you go to the bedroom, then the 7 is like the balcony or something, and then we return back to the mudroom. All the houses are arranged like that. It's consistent across every single major scale. So I could describe and analyze this hymn as 1 first inversion to 4, first inversion to 5 7 of 5. Okay, the 5 7 chord of the 5th scale degree of G. Going to the 5 chord, to the 1, to the 4. Here's 5 7. That resolves to the 1. So this way, if we know the key, we know all the chords, all we have to do is call out the numbers, and then boom, we know what we're talking about. So I hope that this can give you a lens to look through when it comes to learning music, reading music, digesting it, whatever genre you're playing, whatever you're currently interested in, or even just learning by ear. This was like revolutionary for me when I was trying to learn music by ear. Because when you're trying to learn something by ear, you've got 88 keys to choose from. Okay, what do you do with that? What do you do with this huge blob of notes? How do you make sense of it? Functional harmony was maybe it truly was the biggest thing for me when it came to learning music by ear. Okay, so if you've found this video helpful, check out Fundamentals. That is a resource that I created for my students over the course of about 4 or 5 years. I used it to teach them scales, chords, inversions, and just everything we've gone through today. It has every scale, it has every chord, and it has every inversion laid out in diagrams and visuals. If you want to master your fundamentals, if you want to learn all of these so that you can then apply it to your own learning, check out Fundamentals. That is what I refer to when I need to figure something out, or I simply forget something. So check out Fundamentals. That is the key to looking at the keyboard through this lens, if it helped you. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that this video could help. I hope that it could save you a ton of time. And if you want to, look up all these concepts on your own. I don't know, go on YouTube videos, look up articles, look up blogs that explain these concepts, because there's so many people out there that can probably explain it better than I can, to be honest. But I hope that this was a good introduction. Thank you so much for watching, and happy practicing.